Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Jarrell Mason, aka Jay Mason. Welcome to an episode of Beyond the Album Cover, where we get inside the entertainment industry and then some with various people and give them their flowers. This brother right here definitely deserved his flowers right here. I've been a fan of this man for a long time. We've been in various internet circles for a good minute, so it's definitely good to finally chop it up with music. Sports connoisseur, and we're gonna keep pounding. See what I did there with my bro, Greg James. Greg, thanks for coming on Beyond the Album Cover, bro. How are you?
Doing good, my brother, man. Thank you so much for having me on. Very excited about.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to have you on, and I'm definitely doing good today. Hopefully, better than Mike Budenholzer because Matt Itchy Finger Ishbia decided to lay down the hammer and fire Mike Budenholzer after a one and done season in Phoenix. And this is the third coach that he's fired out in the Valley of the Sun since taking ownership over from Robert Sarver. So I want to get your quick take on what's going on in Phoenix. Do you think they're going to move on from KD? And what does it say for Devin Booker? 10 years in the league, one finals appearance to show for it, and it's starting to look like he may end up like Dame Lillard in Portland before he got shipped out to Milwaukee. So make some sense of what's going on in Phoenix right now.
Ah, man, I really can't make too much sense out of it, man. You basically been in the league for a decade now. You're a superstar. You bought help. You got KD, who's one of the most prolific basketball players. I'm not the biggest fan of him, but it is what it is. He's a great basketball player. So with adding him, along with with Booker, they were supposed to do great things, and here we are, man. Yeah, they're struggling right now. So it's just like they're in a rock and a hard place. They're in between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. It's just competing out in the West. You got so many great teams out there.
yeah, man. It kind of feels like Ishbia is kind of doing his best David Tepper impersonation before Tepper, who I give credit for, finally stepped back once the hire of Canales and Dan Morgan as GM. And they've showed promise this past season with Bryce coming on at the last half of the season and with the additions that they made in free agency. I think they decided, look, Evero wasn't the problem with the defense. Once Derrick Brown went down, Shaq went down. It was pretty much a steep drop off in who can fill in. And we're going in at the A spot in the draft, which will be coming up this coming Thursday in Green Bay. A lot of the mocks have us still staying at the A spot, taking Jalen Walker out of Georgia. A few have us taking Ted McMillan out of Arizona as wideout. And I only think that the Panthers may end up moving back out of the eighth spot if someone who's QB needy will come up, make us a strong arts offer. Shout out to Will Wade, new men's basketball coach at NC State, because he can make strong offers now out of a bow box. So what do you think the lean is with the Panthers going into the draft? Do you think they'll still stay at the eighth spot, or do you think they'll end up trading back and getting someone late in the first?
There's a lot of different directions that the team can go in. But let's just get right to the root of it. This is not a good football team right now. This is not a good organization right now. They're terrible. Let's just get to it. No offense to David Tepper, as you stated, he has kind of stepped out of the way. He was kind of doing his best, Jerry Jones impersonation when he first came, and he's kind of trying to meddle in with everything. But you got to give credit where credit is due. He has kind of stepped back, and he's letting the people that he's hired actually do their job. So let's give him a hand clap for that, a little golf clap per se. But as far as what I think they will do in the draft, there's so many different ways that you can go. You can go best player available BPA. That's what that is, and I think that's probably what they're going to do. Jalen Walker, outside of Georgia, he's outside linebacker. That's actually what Dan Morgan says that he is going to be. He's a very prolific player. There's different ways that you could use him in your defense. He can play four different positions. But as I did state, he will probably be an offensive linebacker with the Carolina Panthers. He gives an immediate boost to the defense. The defense right now is one of the worst in the league. They can't get to the quarterback. That's been a problem for us. So he's going to be able to just stick him in there at offensive linebacker, stick him out there at defensive end, and he can get to the quarterback and he can make plays. He's a Buckets Award winner, so he's recognized as the best linebacker in the nation. It's just he's not the biggest in his world. He's about 6'1", 240, so a decent size. So he's what you call a tweener. Basically, you don't know, you can't really put him in one position. So he's that prolific. But I do think that if you draft someone like that, he's going to be an immediate impact. You could also go with Tyler Warren. I mean, obviously, he comes from Penn State. We're basically in a position right now where even though we have such a poor defense, our offense isn't all that great either. Bryce Young, he's still coming along, he's still growing, and he's grown leaps and bounds, but he still needs some more weapons as well. So you could add somebody like a Tyler Warren, who's a big tight end. He's a good pass catcher, he's a good blocker. So you can add somebody like him as well to the mix. Ted McMillan, he's getting a lot of similarities to kind of Mike Evans, the legendary Tampa Bay Buccaneers wide receiver. So you bring somebody in like that who can help Bryce Young and help elevate his game. Even though we did draft a wide receiver last year in XL, Xavier Legette. So I still don't think wide receivers off the table. You got so many others on the team as well that kind of step up, but there's too many different areas, man. And the one thing I like about this draft is even if we do move back, there's so much talent in the second and third round that we can get that I really don't think that we can miss in this draft, especially the first few rounds.
Yeah, definitely can't miss. But I'm hearing a lot about Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, could possibly be a target for us, depending on where he's slotted.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like I said, you definitely can't go wrong. Wide receiver, that's something that I would not be surprised. Somebody like Golden. If he's the first pick for us, there has been a lot of talk about him. Between him, Ted McMillan. You also got Luther Burden outside of Missouri. He's another good choice as well. You can move back and you can still land somebody like that. So there's several different ways that we can go in this draft, but you definitely got to hit with whatever you do, and I think Dan Morgan will. I definitely think that Jalon Walker is that guy, but I'm not sure, 100% sure if he's going to be there at number 8. I'm not sure. He's starting to pick up a little steam now. At first, I was just like, okay, he's probably going to be there at 8. He's going to be our guy, but the way they've been talking about him lately, he could go before that, as it's
Yeah,
possible.
yeah, and then another person who could possibly be there right around 8 through 10 range. Originally, when draft boards were coming out, a lot of people were saying Shador Sanders was going to be a top 5 draft pick, but he's been sliding on some boards. And then, given the news that we heard about Derek Carr's shoulder situation not looking right, it may be where the Saints are in need of a quarterback, but with us blocking the Saints being one pick ahead, it would be a nice little get up where if a team make us an offer that needs a QB, we trade back, they jump into the 8 spot, draft Shador, and undercut the Saints. So that way we don't have to see Shador twice a year.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. And he's actually someone that I'm a fan of. So wherever he goes, man, I definitely wish him the best of luck. I think he's a very talented quarterback. I do think he's going to do some great things in the league. I'm kind of getting off subject, but I think he needs to go somewhere where he doesn't need to start right away. And I'm not sure where they may be, but he definitely needs to go somewhere where somebody can, kind of take him under their wing and, kind of train him up. And then, probably year 2 or year 3, that's when he can step up to the plate and be, the starting quarterback for that franchise. So I think that's the best situation for Shador. He doesn't need to go somewhere where he's got to start right away. Go somewhere where they can kind of nurse him up a little bit. Whatever problems he may be having physically, mentally, get himself right, and then he can kind of step up to the plate.
Right, because not every team is as fortunate as Green Bay to have a set QB there where you draft a young guy that can sit, let cook for a couple of years before it's their time to go in. We saw it with Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers, and then Jordan Love, and how Jordan Love, ever since he took over for Aaron Rodgers, it's pretty much been a seamless transition where we've seen the opposite, where, like you said, a guy gets thrown into the fire quickly and didn't do all that well, like with Bryce's situation coming in year 1, starting right away. And as we saw, play was terrible. And then year 2, 2 games in, Canales sits him down, let him watch Andy for a little bit, sit back, and then we saw what he did last half of the season. But I kind of think with the pressure of what Jaden Daniels did last year, where he had the Commanders 1 game away from the Super Bowl, it's pretty much thinking all these GMs, hey, we could just plug and play a quarterback. He could come in and lead us to what he did, but it's different situations, different team, different fit.
Yeah, and I think that's what the league, they kind of got to get away from that. You had a few quarterbacks that came in and they contributed right away. You had Cam Newton, he's probably the best example. He came in and threw for what, 4,000 yards his first year. So, you have somebody like that where you see these teams, They have, flash in the pan success with a quarterback right away out of college. But everyone's not built like that. Back in the day, you did have to sit for a little while. Look at Aaron Rodgers. He sat behind, Brett Favre, like you said, for a few years, and then when it was his time, he stepped up and he became one of the best quarterbacks of our generation. So I definitely think the league needs to get back to that. You have Bryce Young, who just went through a terrible situation. Man, the guy went through what two head coaches in the first few years, two offensive coordinators in his first year. So it was just a terrible situation. I don't think too many quarterbacks would have been able to make it through that situation. I really don't. That's kind of how bad of a situation he was in. But it really speaks to how resilient that Bryce Young is. And I can remember the Monday after, when he got after he got benched, and just the look on his face, I was just like, oh man, he's showing me something right there. And then sure enough, man, when it was his time to go again, you see what he's capable of. Some of the throws that he made is very few quarterbacks that I could see him see making the same throws that he made, just during the season and how he progressed. And I think he's just going to get better and better. But going back to the draft, I think that's why, it's very crucial that you do get some more pieces for him as well. We have Jalen Coker, we have Xavier Legette, got his safety blanket, Adam Thielen back. So I think that's great. But I mean, you need offensive weapons to win. You look at the Chiefs and you look at all these great teams in the league that have been to the Super Bowl time and time again. They keep reloading every year. So that Carolina wants to get to that point, that's the kind of mindset that they have to have.
Right.
It's nothing wrong with having two or three great people on the team at each position. So if one person goes down, you go to the next person. That's as simple as that. So this draft, all in all, is just very crucial, man, with those 9 or so picks that we have.
And I think we're going to see two trends in the draft. I think teams are going to try to copy the Eagles formula where you stock up on defense, 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 especially those big boys up front to keep the linebackers clean. Because as we saw, the Eagles just dominated Mahomes in the Super Bowl, and Cooper DeJean definitely did his thing. And I also think with what Saquon Barkley did last season, we're going to see a reemergence of the value of the running back. So Ashton Jeanty is probably going to make a good killing, depending on where he goes. I think he's going to probably go to Vegas. And the Giants are looking so sick, like Neo crashing out like a 90s R&B singer when they saw Saquon get his ring, get the ship, feeling like Casey missing you, staring out the window, wanting to pick up the phone, tell him that you're everything you need and more.
Oh man, I see what you're doing, man. You kind of, seem putting in the R&B mix in that. I like that. That's a beautiful thing right there. But um, the New York Giants, they have every right to feel sick. You kind of got this guy, who's very, very talented. I'm very happy for Saquon that things ended out the way that they did, because it's not too many times that something like that happens where, a guy has a significant injury like that and they come back and the way that he did. He's one of the best players in the league right now, man. Just honestly, pound for pound, regardless of position, for him to come back in that way, man, you got to kind of, give him a golf clap right there, man. Yeah, so it's very good. As far as Ashton Jeanty, very amazing back, man. He's whoever gets him, man. Yeah, that's gonna be in for a treat right there, because I could see his game definitely translating in the league. He can catch it out of the backfield. He's a big, stocky back, so there's not too many things that he can't do. So the Las Vegas Raiders, they'd be definitely lucky to have him for sure on their roster to help
Yeah.
out whoever they got.
Indeed. And do you think there'll be a drop off with the Lions this year, losing both OC and DC to head coaching jobs? Or do you think it's pretty much going to be where they maybe have a little bit of a lull first half of the season, but they'll pick it up? But I really think that with the Lions losing both Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson to head coaching jobs, Bears and Jets respectively, that we may see a little bit of a drop off in the lines where they may have to put the car in neutral and push up the hill a little bit.
Yeah, I could definitely see there being definitely a little bit of a drop off right there. You lose two big parts of the teams right there. So I'm not saying that they're not going to make the playoffs or anything like that. I'm not going to go that far, but just they're going to have a little bit of a tough time. I can see that already.
hmm Now switching over to the music side. Now we've seen a lot of acts that we grew up with, starting to take that final lap and touring. Little Brother just announced that they're doing their final tour, and some other acts. So, what do you think about the acts that from the era we grew up with saying, "Okay, we're gonna call it a day"? and do the final lap, and how music has changed to where we consume digitally, attention span shorter, and it almost seems like with the listenership of songs that we're almost reverting back to the eras of 50s and 60s where you'll be lucky if you can get a record that's under 330. It seems like we're going back 2 minute, 3 minute records.
Man, it's you basically said it right there, man. You know, music is kind of definitely in a rough place right now. It makes me feel old first and foremost. You know, when you start seeing these guys like 50 Cent, you know, he had his final lap tour last year. So, you know, it's you start seeing these guys, Little Brother, you know, who I can remember the first time that I ever heard their music was about 06, 07 when I was in college, actually. And I was getting a ride home from school and the guy was, you know, playing Little Brother. I didn't know who they were at the time. And I was like, man, started hearing them rapping or whatnot. I'm like, hey, who is that? He's just like Little Brother. You know, they're from North Carolina. Me being a South Carolina boy, you know, I rep North Carolina as well. You know, you had Petey Pablo and you have, you know, J. Cole all over the years. So, you know, you have a talented group like that. And for them, I think what they added to the game is very special. At a time when you had crunk music, you know, you had trap music, you know, coming into the forefront. They stayed true to themselves as lyricists, you know, and they respected the craft of lyricism. So, you know, they definitely tip their hats off to them, man. You know, job well done. You know what I'm saying? They have nothing else to prove in the music game. And I think they're the most important rap groups within the last 20 years. Yes, and most impactful. You know, you look at the people that they kind of touched over the years, you know, rappers like Doja Cat. You know, yes, she is a rapper. That's a whole different conversation for another day. But you know, for her to say that, you know, she was influenced by them, you know, you have somebody like Lil Wayne who says that he's a fan of Little Brother. Kanye West worked with him early in his career, so that says a lot of them about them right there. Even Kendrick and Drake, you know, they just went at it. But you know, guess what? They both have cited Little Brother as, you know, somebody that they looked up to, you know, coming up in the rap game. So that says a lot about them right there and how impactful they are to the game. But as far as the music industry in itself, man, and just, you know, this the touring, it's music. Like I said, I think Birdman was saying about it, something about it the other day. He claims that there's more money to be made in the game as ever at this point. You know, you have streaming, you got YouTube, you know, you got so many different places where these young artists, you really don't need a label anymore, a major label. You know what I'm saying? So you can come in, you know, you can sell your stuff on iTunes, or, you know, you can, you know, really, you know, be so much money as far as touring. So you don't need that major label anymore. So it's music is I'm not sure, man. It's definitely not what we came up with. It's not selling CDs in the trunk anymore, but music is I don't know, man. It's crazy. What are your thoughts on it?
Man, my thoughts is where, as far as the touring aspect, unless a major label is bankrolling the tour, most artists, you're probably paying that out of pocket. And with most of these venues being owned by either Live Nation, AG, a lot of the big conglomerates, unless you're a representative or have somebody indirectly through one of those companies, you're not getting into these venues. You're pretty much going to do theaters, your smaller venues, and you'd be lucky maybe if you break even with ticket sales plus merch. And you know, if you are signed to a label, you got those 360 deals where they want to get their hands in all the pots, because with everything going digital now, you're hardly going to see any physical copies of records anymore, because it's not like when we came up where you had your last 20 and you're going to Camelot, FYE, Tower, Strawberries, Blockbuster Music, or your local mom and pop record store, and you're like, what am I gonna spend this last 20 on? And when you get that CD, there's maybe only 3 or 4 songs that you like. Rest of the album's trash. But because you're spending that, let's say 11, 12.95 for CD, or 10, 9.95 for cassette, you had to make that decision. So you were personally invested because you were putting your hard-earned money down on that. Whereas now, I can pretty much just go search, click, and it's there. And I can necessarily listen to music on my time frame and not have to rely on how we did with the local radio DJ at XYZ 103 FM telling me this is hot, or waiting to call at 7 o'clock for slamming or jamming or whatever terminology that you use. So you pretty much letting the internet and algorithms tell you, okay, this is hot. And we're going to track your listener habits, and we're going to give you similar artists to that, and therefore funnel you into that.
Yeah, it's just in a weird place, man. And I mean, I could even go to artist development. That's another thing. You have so many artists. Everybody wants to be a rapper nowadays. So yeah, I think really what the labels are looking for is they're looking for your audience. It's not so much about talent anymore. And I hate to say it that way, but in the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, that says it was about talent first. And I think it's kind of gotten to a point now where if you can, sell a million records or something, before you get signed, or you have a million or 2 million followers, organic following, that's really what the label is paying for. They could care less about your talent. You know what I'm saying? That's why you have some people like the Island Boys that can creep into the game and
Hmm.
get some type of traction. Or you can have somebody like a Takashi 69 that can creep into the game. No, they're not that talented, and there's no offense to them, man, but because they have a certain type of personality and a certain fan base, they can creep in and they can get those $1 million deals, multi-million-dollar deals. And so that's kind of how the game is working nowadays. So it's a shame. You have some people out there that could rap their behinds off, that could sing their behinds off, but they're never going to get that deal, not that big deal.
Yeah, you
What I'm
got
saying? They
it.
might be able to do some things on their own, but that's the beautiful thing. Mhm.
Yeah, I was saying it feels like, not to
Yeah,
cut
go
you
ahead.
off. I was saying how it feels like you almost got to have that push from that main event star to get you over, so that you get a big pop from the audience. See what I did there? Since it's WrestleMania week, so shout out to everybody in Vegas getting ready for WrestleMania. We taking place today and Sunday, so it kind of feels like with artists now, you already got to be prepackaged, have something tangible to prove to these labels and say, look, I'm already pushing this without you. All I need is just the major backing and we'll be good to go. Almost similar to how these regional acts before they got on with major labels, where they were popping it out the trunk, like E40, Hammer, Too Short, Ghetto Boys. A lot of those regional acts were going gold, platinum in their region. And once those labels heard, like, hey, so and so's popping here, check them out. Send a scout, check out the numbers from the local stores. It's like, oh, let's translate what you're doing on a regional level, take it national. Because if you know, with Hammer, the Power record, it was originally released indie out in Oakland. And then when he got signed to Capitol, they just did a national repackaging, put some few songs on there for its national release, and then Ludacris went that same route with Back for the First Time, because it was pretty much a national repackaging of the Incognito album.
hmm Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, have somebody like the baby, you know what I'm saying? Who I know everybody wants to kind of pretend like they hate the baby right now, but I'm still a big fan of him, and I think he's still doing some great things. But no, he's a native of Charlotte. He's from there. And you have him. He could have easily went to in Atlanta, Georgia, and he could have blew up there. But he decided to stay there in the Carolinas and do his thing, and he eventually blew up. Now, obviously, he had a little viral moment there. Some things happened that kind of helped spur that, but it shows just how talented he is, and how patient he was. And
Mm.
I think a lot of people kind of taking on that. I don't have to go to Los Angeles, California. I don't have to go to NYC. I don't have to go to Atlanta. I can kind of stay where I'm at right now and build up, in my hometown, and then well, I can blow up that way. And yeah, you do have the ability to do that. Even with maybe like country music is something different like that, where you got to go to Nashville at some point and blow up that way. But as far as the rap game, man, you can be just about anywhere. You know what I'm saying? As long as you have internet connection and you have your talent, man, you can blow up that way too. So
Yeah.
it's different ways of going about it. There's more than yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I was curious to know, what college did you go to, by the way? Sidebar.
Or Georgetown Technical College. That's where I went. I took up hospitality and tourism with the emphasis to business. So, being here in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, that's my hometown. We have a bunch of resorts, a bunch of hotels, restaurants. So, what else are you going to do? That was kind of my mindset, when I went to college. So, obviously, I'm still in that business, man, but I'm kind of leaning towards other things right now. Definitely in the music side. I have the Myrtle Beach Jazz Festival. My father and I, we founded that back in 2016. So that's actually kind of what I'm leaning towards right now, is as far as event planning and and doing things in the music industry in that way. So
All
I
right,
definitely
bet.
love the hospitality business, but am I hand in it somehow, even from a promotion level, booking acts. So it's definitely a love and a passion of mine.
Oh yeah, for sure. And then I got some South Carolina connects as well. Family is in Columbia. Dad is a pastor of a church out in Camden, South Carolina. And so I visit the Palmetto State from time to time. And then I read an article recently, another sidebar, that a lot of people are moving down to South Carolina, primarily in and around Charleston area and maybe Myrtle, upstate, Greenville, Spartanburg, Anderson, that whole area, probably York too if you don't want to live in Charlotte. You can just commute from York to Rock Hill, where Football USA, as they say, Jake Davion Clowney plays for the Panthers. Stephon Gilmore's from Rock Hill, and I believe Winthrop University is in Rock Hill as well. By the way, right?
Yeah, that's actually where my sister went to school. So I definitely spent a lot of time out in Rock Hill. Beautiful place. But one thing I must say is South Carolina is full right now, y'all. It's full, man. Go somewhere else, man. You know, go to North Carolina, man. Go to Florida, go to Georgia, go somewhere else, man. South Carolina, we're full right now, man. And I see it even in effects in the Myrtle Beach and Horry County area. So, man, much love to y'all, but man, just go somewhere else, please,
Yeah,
please.
yeah, man, because I'm hearing from my folks back home, pretty much North Carolina's about to hit that "we full" sign, like when you trying to park at that concert, "we full, boss," because the triangle and the triad, the prices for houses is diabolical right now, especially with tech coming in, gentrification coming in, and Charlotte, of course, all the banks moving their headquarters there, and I believe ACC is now headquartered in Charlotte. They moved from Greensboro to Charlotte, so pretty much, the South is pretty much where everybody wants to go because you can make your money stretch further and that the cost of living is a little bit cheaper, milder winters, hospitality's nicer. But I'm gonna tell you this right now: if you ever hit a cookout, please know what you want before you pull up to the drive-through because we ain't got time to be sitting around waiting for you. Like, can I get a? I'm sure Bill Belichick was horrified when he went to his first cookout after being named Carolina coach when they found out there was no vegan options.
Oh yeah, definitely. As a vegetarian myself, man, it's some options in our area, man, but it's rough, man. And speaking of Bill Belichick, man, I really can't wait to see what he's going to do at the University of North Carolina, man. It's obviously a short-term deal for him. He's going to be there for a few years, so I think it's something that he has to make happen fast. Now, he doesn't have the luxury of having 5 to 7 more years, like some of these younger coaches. So I think he's going to make some things happen very quickly, and then he's going to pass the torch on to someone else. So
Yeah,
very interested in seeing what he's going to do.
yeah, I was surprised that he took the Carolina job because I think he'll be holding out for another NFL gig. But I guess with him taking the job at Carolina, kind of says that, hey, I want to coach anywhere. And it also helps too. He got a nice little tenderoni, that's helping him with him too, managing the social media aspect and everything like that. And I'm like, he probably, if Carolina has an open date when it's G-Ho, I can see him probably sliding through to the 336 for G-Ho. If you know, you know. I'm a UNCG alum. I've never went to G-Ho. Only went to Aggieland maybe once or twice in my whole 5 years at UNCG. But if you know, you know. G-Ho, greatest homecoming on earth, according to all my friends and fellow Aggie alum.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful thing right there, man. So yeah, we're gonna see what's gonna happen with him, man. I'm pretty sure you'll be seeing him with that pretty little thing by his side, man. A lot of places this fall, for sure.
Yeah, man. Because when I first saw, his girlfriend and him, all I thought about was "I'm Sprung" by T-Pain. Now, he was an artist at first. I did not care for when I first heard I'm Sprung, but as you saw when he consistently cranked out hit after hit after hit after hit, the auto tune was just the way to get into the door. But as we saw later on, he could sing without it. Plus, his pen game nasty. So let's talk about real quickly T-Pain's run in the early 2000s.
Yeah, T Pain, again, another artist, man, who is one of the most impactful artists of his generation. Like you said, when he, it's funny, an artist like him when he first comes out and you really don't know what they're going to do. It's like, okay, the song is cool, but you don't see them lasting 10, 15 years in the game. So that's the same situation with me with T Pain. It was cool when he came out when I'm in love with a stripper, just a few other songs that he came out. It was like, okay, it's cool. But then he kept on coming out with hit after hit after hit after hit. And it's like, okay, man, this guy might be around to stay. So, man, even with the ringtones, the impact that he made with that, he was making money just off of that. He didn't need making money off of anything else, just the ringtones alone. that money.
Woo.
You know, so him and Soldier Boy, they kind of started that trend right there. But T-Pain, he definitely grew to become one of my favorite artists of all time, man. And it's a shame that I remember there was a story he was talking about where he was in an airplane and somebody said that Usher wanted to talk to him. And so Usher called him over or whatnot, and they had a little back and forth. And Usher actually told him, you know what, you messed up the music industry, man, because you're messing it up for real singers out there. And that kind of pissed me off a little bit, man. And I never really looked at Usher the same after that, honestly, because what a disrespectful thing to say, for you to disrespect somebody like that of T-Pain's caliber. He's so talented. And for you to just put someone down like that wasn't right. So I mean, I
Yeah.
just got to put that I'll put that out there right now, man. That wasn't the right thing to do because he can't sing without the auto tune, and we all know that
Right.
at this point. So
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think
it's
when
just
he,
man,
yeah, because I think when, like I said, when T-Pain first came out, it was all auto tune. It was debate to get people hooked. And with Usher coming in the old school way where he had to cut his teeth in talent shows and, got put on by L.A. Reid and then working with Devontae Swing, I'll Be Sure on the first album, Diddy, and then second album hooking up with JD and just being a singer and really understanding their craft of being an artist. I think he kind of felt, with T Pain coming in, it was kind of making people that came in that way get overlooked to where you almost got to have sort of like a gimmick to get in through the door, almost kind of like, you're a talented wrestler, right? But the promoter says, want you to do this gimmick to get in the door, but knowing I don't need to dress up as, certain characteristics of certain ethnic groups to make fun of myself to showcase that I'm a good wrestler. I can just come out there, work with anybody, and be just as good without all the bells and whistles. And then you mentioned Soldier Boy, and I think this should not be glossed over. Soldier Boy was viral before viral, if you think about it, because he did everything on the internet prior to popping with Crank That. He had I Got Me Some Bathing Apes, and this was back when people were heavy on MySpace. Shout out to Tom. SoundCloud, probably Dat Piff, rest in peace, Dat Piff. And just how he took advantage of the tools that was there for him at the time. And I think, Soldier Boy should definitely get his flowers.
man, I just think and I'm going to go back to basically what you just said about, the different generations and what Usher may have felt. It just feels so much like get off my line, just being the older person or whatnot. And every generation went through it, whether it's the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, you know what I'm saying? My father didn't like the music that I listened to. His father didn't like the music that he listened to. So it's just, it's a never ending cycle. And I definitely understand what you were saying, just coming up in the game a different way or whatnot. But man, it's just, even though we felt our generation was great, we came up, I'm an 80s baby. So I love 90s music. I love early 2000s music. But, at some point, when I have children one day, I might not like the type of music that they listen to, but, I have to respect it at the end of the day
Right.
because, there's still talent. Even to this day, I know some people want to say that R&B is dead or hip hop is dead. There's some talented artists out there. I listen to LMA, Summer Walker, SZA. There's so many great artists out there nowadays. Jacquees, people can say whatever they want about him. There's nothing you can say to make me hate that guy, man. Even with the king of R&B type of thing, he's a good dude, man. But that's just something it's going to be a never ending conversation. As far as Soldier Boy goes, man, you got to give him his credit, man. He has, found a way to stay relevant even in 2025. And he came out, man, pre 2010s, and he's still here in some way. He's actually going to perform at House of Blues May 3rd here in Myrtle Beach. So, for him to still be touring and making money out of this game, man, you got to respect him because a lot of people in his era, they're fizzled out, man. They fizzled out. They've gone on to do different things. And, we can go back to basically, people going on a final lap tour where they're moving on to different things. You had Little Brother, they just, produced the movies, or they're going to move on to something else. Or you have 50 Cent. We can remember when he came out, and he's big into television and movies right now. So it's a proud moment for me to see these guys. They use music as a vehicle to move on to something else. You don't always have to stick to the same thing for 15, 20, 25 years. It's okay to move on to something else bigger and better and make more money and provide for their families. So it's
Yeah.
a beautiful thing to witness these people just do that.
Yeah, definitely use the music to get your foot in the door, but also use the brand equity that you built to parlay that into other spaces, like we kind of saw with LL, Will, Queen Latifah, and various other artists are now saying, "Hey, let me go ahead and expand my brand to go into this space." And I want to get your take on New Edition. And for me, as a fan, it kind of feels like now they're really starting to get more of their flowers after the miniseries dropped in 2017 and with them selling out the Vegas residency and just how the fans are always showing love, showing out whenever they go on tour. And no male group R&B pop wise has had been influenced either directly or indirectly by Ronnie, Bobby, Ricky, Mike, Ralph, and Johnny over the past 40 plus years. You know, no New Edition, no New Kids on the Block, no Boys to Men, no Backstreet Boys, no NSYNC, no 98 Degrees, no One Direction, no Take That. We could go down the list of all these, no BTS, down the list of all these groups that has been influenced indirectly or directly by New Edition, either as a collective or solely. So can you just talk about New Edition's impact on not the culture, but pop culture and how, they still endured for over 40 plus years?
And I think they've always been popping. You know what I'm saying? That's just my opinion from the 80s to the present. You know what I'm saying? It's just, the black community and, R&B lovers, we've always loved New Edition, no matter, we were raised up listening to them at the cookouts, and, just driving from point A to point B. A lot of our mothers and fathers and, and aunts and uncles, they were fans of New Edition. So, like I said, me being an 80s baby, I definitely was familiar with Bobby Brown and Ralph Tresvant and all of these guys, Johnny Gill. You came up kind of listening to it, so they've always kind of been a part of the culture. And you are right when you say that once that that series came out, that it kind of took them to another level, and they were able to do a little bit more things with that. But um, it just all goes back to making good quality music, and I continue to say that you got to make good quality, timeless music, and you could be making money 30, 40 years down the line. You look at somebody like a Keith Sweat, they can bring him out on the Millennium Tour, and they're singing his songs word for word. So, it's just, I preach to these younger artists out there, man. Just don't just, try to go for the flash in the pan or do it the cookie cutter way and just do something just because it's hot. Like, make something timeless. And I think that's, the impact that New Edition has done. You know what I'm saying? They have had numerous hit records over the years. And it's done them a service, man. They're able to tour, they're able to make music and, new music and other things that they are trying to do out there. So it all starts with the music at the end of the day. That's what it's all about.
And then another person who I'm glad to see still standing after his little bump in the road. He just announced that he's doing a stadium tour to celebrate his 20 years in the business. Man, it's hard to believe it's been 20 years since Chris Brown debuted with Run It. And, folks are, still supporting them and touring. And, lucky for those of you that got tickets to go to his Raleigh stop at Carter Finley Stadium, it is 2 days before the start of North Carolina State Fair. So I'm sure some of you all had to make that choice. Do I go see Breezy or do I save up my ducats to go get that unlimited pass wristband at the fair? So just talk about just Chris Brown and just how, after everything that happened with him early in his career, how he's rebounded and he's still solid in the game 20 years to this day, to where he's selling out stadiums, going to go on the stadium tour.
And I just think it's a testament to just how gifted he is, because a lot of people who got caught up early in their career by that, they wouldn't have made it. They wouldn't have been able to weather that storm. And I think we all remember, I can remember where there were radio stations boycotting his music for a while. They weren't actually playing his music. And if you played his music, man, you kind of were reprimanded for that. So for him to, be able to weather that storm, what he went through with Rihanna, we all know the story at this point. We can talk about it. And for him to kind of, morph into what he's been. I think there's so many ways that, he kind of started off as a good kid or whatnot. He had a squeaky clean image, and, he kind of had to, I think everybody kind of goes through that, where, you start off, even Rihanna, she started off as that, you started off as the good girl and then you kind of turn. But as far as Chris Brown, I think and I may receive some heat for this. He's the closest thing we've seen to Michael Jackson as far as ability. I'm not talking about his impact, but as far as the ability to dance, sing, act, I think man, he's the closest thing to it. Even Bobby Brown, the great Robbie Brown, has said that himself. He's the closest thing to it. So,
Yeah,
I think you for that. You know what I'm saying? Just I never seen an artist do some of the things that he's done on stage. Being able to do backflips on stage and act as if nothing happened. The breath control that takes, the amount of technique, it's a gift. So,
yeah.
for him to still, and he's selling out tours every year. So for the people that saying he's blackballed, where is he blackballed? He's out here, charging $1,000 for a picture, and people are paying for it. That's some people's rent right there for him to be able to do what he's doing at this level, man. He was never blackballed, in my opinion. Yeah, the companies kind of may have, backed off from him a little bit, but the guy, I think in Africa, he sold 100,000 tickets in
Hmm.
Africa, another
Hmm.
continent. So for him to be able to do something like that of that level, of that magnitude, it speaks to how great he is, man. It's not too many artists in music that can do that.
Right.
Maybe a Beyonce or Taylor Swift, or Bruno Mars, some big names like that, man. But he's kind of put himself in that 1% as far as artists, as far as my opinion. He's definitely one of my favorites. He's another one you can never make me hate him. I'm always gonna be a fan of Chris Brown, man, no matter what.
Oh yeah, definitely. And you touched on the Club Shay Shay interview with Shannon Sharp that Bobby Brown was on, where he mentioned Chris Brown was the closest thing to Michael Jackson. And I agree. And what's your take on the athletes now having the platform to be able to say their truth, not go through a middleman? You got Club Shay Shay, you got Nightcap, you got All the Smoke with Matt Barnes, Steven Jackson, Draymond with his podcast. 7 p.m. in Brooklyn with Melo and all these other athletes having platforms now to where we don't have to go to a reporter at ESPN to tell our story. We can just go direct to the fans. And what's your take on the athletes now having the power to go on, speak their truth, say, hold on, I'm going to counter what you said because now I have the narrative and can control it.
Yeah, first and foremost, man, I just want to definitely give a shout out to Shannon Sharp, Unc. Apparently he's has $100 million deal on the table right now. That for his platform. Club Shay Shay and a few other things, Nightcap that he has going on. So big ups to him. He's definitely getting that chicken. He's getting that money, and it's well deserved because he's been consistent. He's put in a lot of hard work, and I think it's a great thing, for athletes like him, for different athletes in the game, to be out there on these platforms and finally, having their voice. They're not having somebody else, say it for them on, ESPN or CBS. They're able to tell their stories, and use their connections because he's built up a lot of connections over the years with some of these players and some of these personalities that he can have his own show. So, why does he have to to be on an ESPN where he can build his own thing and he can say what he wants to say. He doesn't have to be silenced. He doesn't have to be blackballed as we were talking about earlier. He can kind of do his own thing and get paid handsomely for it. And he's done that. Chad Edge Ochocinco, the same thing, who's a big personality. He deserves to have his own platform as well and, be able to say what's on his mind
Mhm.
without being restricted by a platform, because we know how easy it is for some of these, these bigger companies that if you say the wrong thing or something that they don't like, man, they can pull the plug on you just like that. And I've seen that happen to so many great athletes over the years, so many great personalities where all it takes is that they'll have to kind of put on the leash per se.
Right,
They can only go but so far. They
right,
can say some things, but
right,
there's certain things that they can't touch. So
right.
I think that's a beautiful thing as well. That's the power of ownership, owning something.
Hmm.
And that's what Dame Dash talked about. Everybody wants to hate on Dame Dash, but that's all he was talking about in that Breakfast Club interview so many years ago. The power of ownership. He can move how he wants to move. He can say what he wants to say. He doesn't have to, call somebody boss, aka daddy.
Hmm.
And that's basically what it comes down to. So, like I said, y'all can say what y'all want about Dame Dash, man. I love that dude, man. And I read his book, Culture Vultures, and there's a lot of truth and a lot of game in that book. And I think a lot of people kind of, woke up after seeing that. And they're moving a lot differently now, doing
Yeah.
some great things.
Yeah, man, definitely got to put that book on the list. What Dame Dash, Kareem Biggs, and Jay did with Rockefeller, where they said, "Look, we're not gonna look for a Mabel label entry to get into the game. We're gonna do it ourselves." And then they ended up getting the deal, I think, first with Priority to put out Reasonable Doubt, classic rap album produced by North Carolina legend 336 on Ski Beats. Shout out to Ski Beats, and of course Clark Kent, rest in peace, did some production on there as well. And just going back to Shannon Sharp real quick, Shannon is winning right now, with Nightcap, with Club Shay Shay, then of course with his brother Sterling finally getting the long overdue not to get the gold jacket to go into the Hall of Fame because I saw some highlights of Sterling Sharp, and he wasn't no slouch, people. He was consistent. He was giving people that work. If in the 90s, Jerry Rice, number one, Sterling Sharp was right there with number 80 in San Francisco, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Well deserved, man. It was a long time coming for him. I know that Shannon Sharp was vouching for him for the longest time, man, trying to get his brother in that Hall of Fame, and rightfully so. So it's good to start seeing players, that deserve to be in there. And it's no disrespect to anybody that got it before him, but, sometimes, they don't always get it right. Now,
Mm,
let's just keep it real. The league, you know what I'm saying?
right,
They kind of put some people in before they probably should, but,
right,
it is what it is.
right,
He's in there now. So,
right,
man, big ups to him.
right. And speaking of not getting it right, do you think they didn't get it right with Luke Kuechly not getting in on the first ballot?
That's so tough to say, man. I love Luke Kuechly. He's one of my favorite. He is my favorite Panther of all time. He's right up there with Julius Peppers and Cam Newton. He had a 7-year career. He came in the league swinging. It's not one of those situations where he came in and he had to find his footing and he took off his 3rd year. He came in right away. I'm talking about first team, and establishing himself as one of the best linebackers in the league. I'm gonna tell you how good Luke Kuechly was, and I'm gonna get to you about the Hall of Fame. When you have a player like Drew Brees, who's one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, in my opinion, that says Luke Kuechly basically knew a third of the plays before he even snapped the ball. That's how great Luke Kuechly was. That's how great he was. So when you say that, do I think he was snubbed? It's tough. It's 7 years, but I think he definitely deserved to get in on the first try. I would not have been you couldn't debate against that if they did pick him to get in the first time around.
Mhm.
You could have no argument against him because his accolades, his statistics, all of the things that he's did in those 7 years, man, is really quality over quantity. I don't care if you play 15 or 16 years, is what did you do in those seasons?
Mhm.
In all of those 7 seasons, he was great. He was on fire. He changed the and we haven't been able to replace him since then. That's the craziest thing about it. We
Mhm.
have not been able to replace Luke Kuechly since then. So absolutely, yeah, he snubbed on. I'm gonna go with that route. He was
Yeah,
snubbed the first
yeah,
first time.
yeah. Kuechly carried on tradition of great Carolina Panthers linebackers. Started with the late Sam Mills, who came over from New Orleans, a part of the famed Dome Patrol. Helped the Panthers establish themselves when they first came to the league in '95. And I think the following year, the Panthers went to the NFC title game, ended up losing. And then after him, of course, you have Dan Morgan, John Beeson, TD, Luke, and it kind of seems like always hits on those picks. And now, with it being the 10-year anniversary of that 2015 season, the Super Bowl run, the Super Bowl 50, where we played the Broncos in San Francisco and lost. And we forgot to mention Cam about with the athletes having the podcast that got 4th and 1. Do you think that looking back in hindsight that front office kind of squandered what they had in Cam and didn't really properly build around him and give him the proper pieces like what they're doing now with Bryce?
Oh, absolutely. I just think it's a testament, and I spoke on Cam Newton a little earlier. He came in the league, he threw for 4,000 yards, he broke multiple records that some of those records he still holds to this day. But when you have somebody that's that great, that massive, the guy's 6'5", 260 pounds, and you think that okay, he's great. We really don't have to give him these amount of pieces, and they kind of failed him. And I'm just going to keep it real as a Carolina Panthers fan. They didn't really give him that offensive line. They didn't really give him the weapons. At one point, Ted Ginn Jr. was his number one, and that's no disrespect to Ted Ginn Jr. He's rocket fast and one of the fastest of all time, but he's not really number one. He wouldn't have been the number one in too many other places. So
Right.
that's really, Devin Funches and, Kelvin Benjamin and all these guys that you can name over the years, just he really didn't have that too much to work with, and until, obviously, a few other players came, after that, they kind of helped him out a little bit, but there's a lot more that they could have done. And I think they kind of learned from their lessons. They learned from their failures, and they're kind of doing something differently with Bryce Young. They're bringing in guys. We'll see what they do later in this draft next week. So, but it's just a shame because, after that 2015 Super Bowl, it's just, we haven't been right ever since, man. It's just, and I kind of had a feeling that's why I wanted to win it so bad because I was just like, oh, man, there's no telling when we're going to get back. There's no telling.
Right. Right, because I
And here
think
we are.
for me as a Panthers fan, that Super Bowl loss hurt even more than the '03 loss where we lost to TB12 and the Patriots because, everybody going into Super Bowl 50 was saying we were the favorites to win it. And, we were going to send Peyton Manning out on that farewell retirement party tour by lifting up the Lombardi. But that defense stand up. I mean, they had Von Miller, Hall of Famer Demarcus Ware. You got Sheriff Payton and all the offensive pieces that they had. They just had that one good game, but it was where we were just mowing down teams all season. Cam won league MVP that year. And to just get on the biggest stage and to kind of fall like that, for me as a fan, I was sick. And if you take Jake Delhomme out of that '03 team, drop Cam in, they would have easily won the Super Bowl with that squad with Smitty, Moose, Jordan Groves, Stephen Davis, Deshaun Foster, who was no slouch himself, current football coach at UCLA. And what's your take on Michael Vick taking the head coaching job at Norfolk State, Deshaun Jackson at Delaware State, and kind of we're seeing the Coach Prime effect where with what he did at Colorado, it's kind of pretty much starting a domino effect where a lot of these guys who had experience in the game, are saying, look, I want to take what I've learned and share it with the youth. Because if you think about the staff Dion got at Colorado, I mean, you got Marshall Falk on your staff, Warren Sapp on your staff. You got Hall of Famers who got the gold jackets to prove that, hey, you're getting a master class in how to play this position. And you're going to be right, whether it's going to be you go to the league or going to something else. We're going to get you right one way or the other.
Man, I just think it's a beautiful thing. You look at these guys, man, they're rich, they made a lot of money over the years, but they could just go right off into the sunset if they wanted to and just spend time with their families and go to Cabo every year and it's just, travel the world and do great things. But for them to take these positions and actually, take the time out to, to school these kids and, to mold them into the great men that they're going to be, there's a lot to be said for that. So, you got to give it up to Michael Vick, who was, if you're a black kid in the neighborhood, man, in the hood, man, you grew up, watching this guy. You grew up respecting him. I saw, more black kids want to grow up to be quarterbacks after Vic came into the league. That's the kind of effect that somebody like him had. You had somebody like a Deshaun Jackson, who's done a lot of great things over the years, made a lot of money, and he's getting the opportunity to go in and coach that football team and do some great things. So I want to see more of it. We need more black head coaches. I'm just gonna keep it real, at every level, whether it be collegiate, whether it be professionally, over, wherever it may be. I definitely want to see more black head coaches. So I'm 100% on board with that for sure.
Yeah.
It's much deeper than what people think. I'm saying? You have a league that's, has so many black players in it. I'm saying? You kind of need somebody that looks like them. Even this younger generation that's coming up, they need to see examples because, a lot of, these kids, they grow up, they want to be players, man. But what about coaches?
Mhm.
That's it. Look at you. Have you seen some of the contracts that some of these coaches are getting in the NFL?
Yeah.
So yeah, going back, if I could go back and change the hands of time, that's probably what I would be shooting for.
Right.
So, but
And
it's so much more to it that like I said, you have the chance, the opportunity to mold a young kid, and and not just teach them the game of football because their career is going to end someday, and they're going to grow on, and they're going to get married and have kids, and do whatever it is they're going to do with their life, and be good citizens on this planet. But it all starts with learning the game and learning teamwork and all of those things applies to life as well. So there's so many things that a coach teaches. And
right.
who better else to choose than Michael Vick or Deshaun Jackson or whoever else?
Yeah, and just thinking about with college athletics now with NIL, it's definitely been a game changer where for decades the NCAA been suppressing college students saying you're only doing it for the love of the sport, for amateurism, you're not able to make money. And of course they were getting it under the table. But now everything that cats were getting fired, getting sanctions for is now legal. And as we saw just recently, the situation in Tennessee with Nico Imalava, who decided he was going to play hardball and hold out. Tennessee said thanks, but no thanks. And now he's suiting other schools for his services. So it's now where college athletes can say, look, I'm going to get me a bag either way. And it almost feel like it's the blue chips and the program. If you know, you know. Shout out to Alvin Mack, best fictional movie linebacker ever. Is where kids are now saying, "Look, I'm going to to the highest bidder. You're gonna have to pay me. This school is giving me XYZ. Beep you, pay me."
Absolutely. And just, the Nico situation, just it's just something that, kind of got a little out of hand there, you know what I'm saying? From my understanding, he kind of, was going, behind his team's back or whatnot and trying to make money. But hey, do what it is you got to do, because I forgot who it was. It was a former athlete I saw actually online the other day, and they were very good athlete, and I think it was Shady McCoy. That's who it was, Shady McCoy. And he was saying, that there would be times where they'd win a big game or something like that, and they'd be struggling to buy a cheeseburger after the game, because they weren't able to really accept money like that. So, for them to be in a position where they're able to make money now, whether it be $1 or $2 million or 3 million, and they're able to help their money, because we all know how much the NCAA makes. They make a lot of money. So, you got to give back to the people that's putting their bodies on the line, because a lot of these kids, they're putting their livelihood on the line, man, as far as, getting these concussions and things like that. We have one guy, from Coastal Carolina. His name escapes me at the moment, but he had to medically retire
Oh
because he
yeah,
got so many concussions.
Grayson McCall.
Yeah, Grayson McCall, he just recently had to retire. So he's not going to get the opportunity to even play professionally. So for some of these kids, man, they're not going to go to the league. This is it for them. So for them to be able to make all the money that they can at the collegiate level, man, I think it's a beautiful thing. So that, if they want to, they can kind of hang up their cleats after their career is over with and move on to something else, and they have some money to start off with. So that is a good thing with it. And more often than not, they do the right thing with it. A lot of these kids, some of them trick it off. I know that if I was making that kind of money in my 20s, my early 20s or teens, I'd be tricking off some of it as well. It is what it is. Let's just keep it real. You're going to trick off some of it now. But a lot of them, they're going to do the right thing with it as well,
Yeah,
too.
yeah. Because you don't understand. Back in the day, when you went to that mailbox and you saw that check from the financial aid department from that refund, you like,
Mm.
yeah, I'm eating good tonight, buddy. Let me go to the ATM, deposit that bad boy real quick. Or if you're real broke, what you would do the buyback hustle, buy the books, get good with somebody. Like, hey, you take this class, let me borrow your books, sell your book back, get you for a nice little lick. You may be able to take a nice little young lady out to eat off campus, or if you had leftover money on your card for your balance, but look, girl, we ain't gonna go eat at the cafe today. We're gonna go eat at this little spot right down the street, and they take campus cash. Whatever you want, baby. It's your world. But that's the one thing about college, though, that young kids are missing. College teaches you how to have fun being broke. I'll say it again. College teaches you how to have fun being broke because you and your partners, you got some money. You're like, okay, how much you got? Okay, you got five. Okay, you got five. All right, you got 10. Hey, let's go in on a Domino's pizza. And y'all split that bad boy. Or you're ordering Chinese food from the Chinese spot and you got your student ID. That college special fed you, kept you hungry when you didn't know what to do. If the calf was closed, if your hookup wasn't at the front, be like, hey, I'm all out of swipes. Can you let me in? Like, go ahead, go ahead, go ahead. I mean, college teaches you how to be in the trenches and how to survive. I mean, I knew some people who were doing oodles and noodles, putting the water from the sink in the community bathroom, getting $5 dorm room haircuts. I never did it because I don't trust nobody to mess up my hair. I don't want to be like Bibby the Barber in Atlanta. But if you know, you know. But college kids now on the athletic side, they're not able to go through that. They already got a bag to come in, and we're kind of seeing with the transfer portal, it's college free agency, where teams are not necessarily looking to have the 18, 17-year-old freshman to come in. You're looking to build off of the portal and maybe pulling in a recruit here and there to kind of fill out the roster. So, what's your take on the transfer portal and how it's pretty much college sports version of free agency?
I mean, the game has changed. Whenever you add money to the equation, money changes things, no matter what it is. So I think the last time I checked, I just saw this the other day. There's actually 10,000 kids in the transfer portal right now between D1, D2, and D3. There are 10,000 kids in the transfer portal. So
Mm.
whether they stayed at a school for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and they decided to go into somewhere else, man, that's how many kids kind of want to move on. So I mean, there is a sense of loyalty. Um, that's what we grew up on. You know what I'm saying? You go to that one school, you stick it out, and if things don't work out, you can kind of move somewhere else. But a lot of these kids right now, man, they're chasing that bag, like you said, they're chasing the bag, man. It's all about where the most money is. So a lot of these coaches, these athletic directors, they have to get more creative with their pitch when they're talking to these 18, 19-year-old kids. They got to get creative with it. This is what we can do for you. It's no longer about, talking to a kid about staying there 4 years. Hey, we can do this for you in year one. So a lot of these kids, what I'm saying, a five-star athlete, a four-star athlete, they want to come in. They not only want to get the bag, they want to play right away.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't play right away or they don't get the amount of minutes that they think that they're worthy of, then guess what they're going to do? They're going to move on to something else,
Right.
which is completely fine. So, I saw this coming, when when the money, NIL thing started coming up, it's just like, okay, it's definitely going to change the trajectory of college football and college athletics in general. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But they're getting something that they were worthy of all along. These athletes, they deserve to get paid. I do think they're going to have to make some changes at some point. I don't know what those changes are, but
Mm.
things are kind of spiraling out of control. Where you have a situation like Nico in Tennessee, for that to kind of have fizzle the way that it did, it's just like, okay, man, you kind of gonna have to figure it out somehow. But NCAA, they kind of open up the door for something like this to happen.
Right.
It's kind of on them at the end of the day. They should have did this from the beginning, So this
Right.
this is on them. They
Right.
opened this cans of worms. They created this monster,
Yeah.
and they got to answer for that
Yeah.
somehow. So
Yeah.
we'll see
Yeah.
within the next few years, what kind of changes are coming.
Yeah, and we got to salute Ed O'Bannon because Ed O'Bannon was the one who sounded the horn for that when he sued because he saw that his image and likeness was in the NCAA basketball game and said, "Hey, why is my image and likeness on this game and I'm not getting the dime from it?" So I'm gonna sue. And he pretty much opened up the floodgates for that because when you think about it, him, Christian Leitner, all of those clips that we see every year during March Madness, none of those are getting money from it because once you sign those letters of intent, they say we own your name, image, and likeness in perpetuity. And a lot of people think that those scholarships are full 4 year rides. Nope. They're 4 1 year scholarships. So if you ain't putting out, coach can say we just ain't gonna re-up you. Or new coaching regime come in. They want to bring in day folks. And they're like, nah, you don't fit in our plan, so we ain't gonna re-up you. So, it's a dirty game. It's almost like a Bit Red Records. My office hours are
Yeah,
from nine
yeah.
to five. Yes,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah,
dirty, dirty
it's
game.
a dirty game. It's a dirty game for sure, man. But like I said, man, it's definitely nothing's perfect. They're just gonna have to get creative and know how they're gonna make changes to it. And like I said, I look forward to doing. They're gonna have to make them soon because it is starting to spiral out of control right now, for sure.
Right, right. And The Last Dance when it came out 5 years ago, it was during the pandemic. Had everybody in a chokehold. I was one of those kids, one of those people watching The Last Dance, and one of those kids who was a Chicago Bulls fan in the 90s. I always picked them first on NBA Jam. Hornets was second. We'll get to the Hornets in a minute. But with The Last Dance and what that did, you're kind of seeing teams now doing these docs about the histories of their teams. Right now, we got the ongoing documentary, Celtic City, about the legacy of the Boston Celtics. And, just thinking about Tatum and crew winning one last year, for me, it kind of felt like for them, they were able to stop chasing the ghosts of Bird, McHale, Parrish, Pierce, Garnett, Allen, all those teams that won before them, Cousy, Russell, Sam Jones, KC Jones, Havlicek, all of those guys, once they finally raised up Banner 19, they felt like, okay, we can rest. We don't have to look up and say we're chasing them because we got ours now. So can we just talk about the impact of The Last Dance and how MJ is still making an impact and the man ain't even playing. I mean, he's making more money off of his shoes than what he's doing now and how people still want to be like Mike.
Man, just he's just one of those transcendent figures, man. That even if you're not really a fan of Michael Jordan, you have to respect his game. You have to respect what he brought to the game. You know what I'm saying? He was a superstar. And I mean, there was really no one like him before. Yeah, you had Wilt Chamberlain, you had Jamar, so many great players before him, know. But there was really just bringing the sneakers into the game and, just being on the commercials. Y'all want to be like Mike. We all said that at one point. I'm an Allen Iverson guy personally, but, I definitely had a lot of respect for Michael Jordan and what he contributed to the game. And for him to still be relevant after all these years, like you said, and he does a lot of great things, man, building hospitals in the North Carolina area. So some people say he doesn't like to give back, but he gives back to the community a lot. He does a lot of great things, man. So it's not just the sneakers, but he really proved just how important it is to have a brand. And I think, that a lot of, athletes, man, they kind of looked up to that and, hey, you gotta stay out of trouble now. You gotta give that up to him. You know what I'm saying? For over the years, they's kind of, stay doing the right thing. And I'm not saying no one's perfect or whatnot, but you got to be careful of, who you associate yourself with, the things that you say publicly, because those things can harm you. Mm-hmm. So those are kind of the things that, Michael Jordan, in my opinion, he's kind of, taught people.
Yeah. Because when you think about Jordan, his impact, he kind of took what Bird and Magic started when they both came into the league, made it global. Because when you think about it, prior to the era of Jordan, NBA had a rule where teams could only wear this color of sneakers, and that they fined Jordan every time he wore the Air Jordan 1s. And Nike, to their credit, smartly said, we're going to pay for the fine, because they knew if the NBA is banning it, people are going to want them. And right they were, because Sports Illustrated did an article back in the day, your sneakers are your life. People were getting stuck up for Jordans and those starter jackets too, which goes back to the Hornets. Because for those of you who do not remember, who were not born when the Hornets came into the league, the Hornets set the league on fire, had the league record for attendance. And I knew folks who weren't from North Carolina that had that Charlotte Hornet starter jacket. It was A1 if you had that Charlotte Hornet starter jacket in the streets, or you had on some pair of Larry Johnson Grandmama Converses, or you had on an Alonzo Mourning jersey, a Muzzy Bowles jersey, or even a Dale Curry jersey when he came to Charlotte. And to think, that man birthed us the greatest shooter the game has ever seen. I got to see the chef cook up close because Davidson and UNCG played each other when they were in SoCon. And when I first saw Steph on the court, I was like, who this little itty bitty boy? I mean, no facial hair. Kind of looked like Robert Richard when he was on Nickelodeon Sports Theater back in the day, Mr. 4 Points. But, his range was full grown then. And to just think how Steph made it okay for kids to say, okay, I can't dunk, but I know I can shoot. And now, if you probably go to every AAU tournament or every pickup game in the park, you got kids wanting to be like Steph, shooting from deep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, definitely, man. Steph has changed the game in a lot of ways, man. It's just to the point where, you saw in the 90s where it was more of a defensive driven league. And, you got to the point now, where these kids, everybody wants to shoot 3-pointers, even the centers and the power forwards want to shoot 3-pointers, man. So, that's kind of the impact that he's had. And for him to come into the league, his scouting report was not very good, actually. If people remember his scouting report where they say, he might be a fringe starter. That's what they actually said on his scouting report. He may be a fringe starter, or he'd be a good 6-man or something like that. And for him to kind of blossom into the superstar, and for him to just be as consistent as he's been, I don't think he's won his last championship. Honestly, I really don't, man. I think that he's gonna, maybe get one more, and it would be a beautiful thing since we're talking about the Charlotte Hornets. What about if he gets one more in Golden State and he decides to come back to Charlotte? How beautiful of a thing that would be. There's been talk about it now. There's been talk. So I'm not sure about how hot that is exactly, but it's starting to heat up a little bit, that kind of conversation where if he wins one more in Golden State, he can leave there, come back home to Charlotte, maybe stay there for a few more years and retire there. So there's so many different directions you can go with that, man. And wow. Yeah, man, imagine him and his brother playing together or something like that. That'd be crazy, man.
Yeah, that'd be dope. And if they do that, bring back the purple and teal jerseys, please, and thank you. And I want to get your take on the NBA trade that broke the internet. When I first saw it, I thought somebody was lying. When the Dallas Mavericks trade Luka to the Los Angeles Lakers for AD and some other players, and to just think you got prime Luka coming off of the NBA Finals appearance with Dallas last year to go pair up with Bron, who's 20 plus years in, and how we're kind of sort of seeing with, that pairing plus with the firings of Coach Malone in Denver, which was crazy. And then, of course, Budenholzer getting fired. And it almost kind of feels like Lakers brass thinking maybe we could get one or two more with Bron before maybe he decides, A, I want to hang it up, or B, maybe go on a retirement tour, leave LA, go back home to Cleveland, and end it there.
Yeah, yeah, so definitely, yeah. Much like you, I was in pretty much shock when I saw it online for the first time, and that's where I saw it on Facebook, and I didn't believe it. I thought it was just another meme or something, faking meme or whatnot. But you find out from ESPN that it actually did go down, and even Luka himself, he said he was shocked. He did not see it coming, and how far downhill? I mean, it's just the general manager. He's going to have to answer for that, man. The fans, what I'm saying, if they they end up having another bad season the next few years or whatnot, and if Luka goes on and he leads the Los Angeles Lakers to another championship, how sick is he going to feel? How bad is that going to make him look? So that's just something right there that's not cool. As far as LeBron, I think that's what he's really shooting for is another championship, man. He's already won enough already, but there's nothing wrong with winning one more. He's the same guy that grew up looking at Michael Jordan and different players like that, Kobe Bryant. He is playing in LA. So he kind of wants to make his stamp there. You got one already, but some people are saying that that happened in COVID year, blah blah blah. That doesn't count. That was in a bubble. So he kind of wants to redeem himself.
Yeah.
So and then win one more. So we will kind of see what happens with that. And after he wins that, he kind of has the room to kind of move around and do whatever he wants to do. If he wants to go back to Cleveland, go back to home, that'd probably be a first choice, or hell, even go to Miami or something like that, where he has a home there too. So
Mhm.
there's a lot of different angles that he can go with it as far as that's concerned. But the guy's had a hell of a career, man. For him to be playing at the level that he's playing at his age is incredible. A
Yeah.
lot of people they would have already hung their sneakers up already, and this guy's still going. He might be able to see his son Bryce play. That's just the way he's playing right now, man. He's already got one son there with him,
Yeah.
and to some
Yeah.
extent.
Yeah.
So,
Because
but just imagine if he was able to actually see Bryce coming to the league, and and both of them are there. That's just I think that might be what he's waiting on, man. Honestly.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Because
then at that
crazy.
point, you'd be like, just okay, mission is complete right now. I'm good. I've brought my sons into the league, and this is my final, this is my final lap right here.
Yeah, it's crazy with LeBron. He's really the first athlete that we saw grew up. Because I remember watching that NBA draft, seeing him get drafted by the Cavaliers, where he had the diabolical baggy suit, and to see him go from a kid from St. Vincent St. Mary's in Akron to where he is now. I mean, only a year younger than LeBron, and to just think like, man, we literally watched him grow up, and to think that he broke Kareem Abdul-Jabbar's all-time scoring record, to where you definitely got to put LeBron on your top five list of greatest players to ever lace him up. He's definitely up there on mine. I got him, MJ, Kobe, Shaq, and then I'll probably put Steph on there for my five.
Yeah, that's a solid five right there. And you got to give LeBron another, credit for actually they were crowning him the king when he was in high school. They were crowning him the king already. So for him to actually live up to that, now saying, he could have fizzled out after year one or two, or he just, when he went to his first championship, that could have been it for him, man. But for him to be playing at the level, they crowned him at an early level. I can remember, watching him play high school games on ESPN when he was in high school. So, and for him to just, really live up to what the media was creating him, because they were building him to be the next Jordan. Now, whether you think he's better than Jordan or whatnot, that's a whole different conversation. Some people say MJ is better. Some people think LeBron has surpassed him. So, but one thing that can't be argued is that he did live up to what they created, the media. They crowned him the king, and I think he's definitely he's the man in the league, and he has been for a very long time.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely that. And who do you got in the NBA playoffs? Getting ready to kick off. They just had the playing games about 2 days ago. Last night they had the battle for the eighth seed, and a lot of people are thinking it's going to be a OKC Celtics finals with possibly OKC in seven, but I think Boston's experience will probably do OKC in. OKC got to probably wait another year before they finally break, and I think the Celtics are probably going to go back to back and get banner number 20 to hang up in Boston.
And yeah, I'm gonna go Boston, man. They're gonna go back to back, man. That's what it's gonna be, man. They're just stacked, man. They got a great coach, they got a great system going on for them. So, OKC, they're definitely young, they're talented, a hungry group. But like you said, they're probably a year out before it's time for them, really to take that next step. So I'm gonna go with Boston, man. I can see them winning it all the way, and we all know how crazy that fan base is, man. And they love their Boston Celtics, and I think they're gonna bring them another one home, man. They're gonna have to build another stadium, to put all those banners in after a while, man. They're getting so many of them. So
Yeah, I mean, if you know Tatum's hairline is gonna be crisp, you know the game is gonna be right. Because I've never seen that man without a whack hairline. I mean, he must got a barber on payroll with the way that his hairline be looking every single game. I mean, no flaws at all.
well, I mean, he has the beautiful LMA by his side. So, man, if I had something beautiful like that by my side, I'd be staying nice and crispy too. So, there's a reason why he's staying nice and fresh and crispy, man.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
got
Another
a
dude
beautiful little
that,
pretty thing about him.
yeah, another dude that always stays fresh is Bam Adebayo. Shout out to Little Washington 252. Because if you haven't seen the Netflix doc, where they documented the Olympics this past year, they showed him always in a wave cap, always had a brush on him. I'm thinking them J5 boys probably might have been recruiting him hard when he was at Kentucky for that good little minute. He definitely meet the Kentucky criteria because he was letting them waves bait like Tracy in Atlanta before his job interview. He went to go get his shoes from that shoe store, and he said, this store got a no chase policy. If you know you're
Yeah,
not
man,
if
my waves, my waves used to be nice as well, man. I remember going to the barbershop and it was just like, man, you got an ocean on your head, man. So, man, that was back in like sixth and seventh grade. So I need to get back to that, man. I need to get them a raise and start putting that on there and get my wave cap back on, and I'm gonna get my waves back, man. You can still see them, man, but
Yeah, I can see, I
they're
can
not
see him, I
spinning
can
like
see
they
him a
used
little
to.
bit. I can see him a little bit. I tried to do waves once. I ain't got the patience for it to be do-ragging, brushing, greasing, brushing, grieving, brushing. And nah, I don't fit that bill. So I just give me a half all over, taper back, clean shave, and I'm good. I mean, fellas, if you know nothing else, know this. Know how you want your hair cut. So you can go to any barbershop, tell them what you want, and you can get it done. Now, another rule: be sure you get to the barbershop early in the morning on Saturday. Because if not, you're gonna be waiting. Or if you already got your barber, but hey, what time you coming through? So and so, hey, make an appointment for this time. You may pay a little extra depending on where you go because barbershop prices ain't the same everywhere. Because back in the day, those haircuts used to be inexpensive. Now, at least for me, when I go get my cut, I'm paying at least 28. That's before tip. So depending on where you go, if you're in a bigger city, you're gonna shell out a good grip for a cut. Now, extra stuff, you're gonna shell out a good grip for that too. Now, Bryce, his hair game is on point. Cause I've never seen Bryce look sloppy either. Now, when I look at Bryce's game, I kind of see him more as a a complementary piece to where you got to have all the pieces around him fit in order to accentuate his skill set because we saw what he can do at Alabama. We know that Bryce can play in the league, but he got to has the right pieces around him. And like we mentioned earlier, I think Dan Morgan, Dave, and Brent, they're realizing that we got to surround Bryce with the right pieces. And I think looking back, once we finally turn that corner and become that team that we're envisioning, I think the biggest get that nobody's talked about, that's going to be talked about, is us poaching away Brent from Kansas City because this man was the architect of those Super Bowl teams and structuring Mahomes' deal and seeing what it looks like on the inside. And I think we're molding the Panthers in that way. And Canales bringing in everything that he learned under Pete Carroll in Seattle. So it's going to be a mix of what the Chiefs do on the front office side and what Seattle does on the coaching side. And I think this is the first season in a long time where there's going to be some optimism going into this season with Bryce playing well, back half of the season. You got everybody on the O line coming back, locking up JC with his deal. bringing back Mike Jackson, picking up Rico Dowdle, which I think was a sneaky good pickup. While Brooks is rehabbing his injury, we'll see him in 26. And then Chuba coming off his 1,000 yard season. And I think the pieces are in place. We still got a few more holes to fill, like you said earlier. But I think if things go right this season for Carolina, I think we may end up being like the 21 Lions before they had their breakout season the following season after making their NFC championship run. I think that we could probably make some noise and say, hey, we're on the come up, but I really think 26 will be the real breakout season for Carolina if cards go correctly, because it's still, to me, year two of Canales building the team the way he wants to build. And I think Tepper, from what we saw last season, is patient enough now to say, hey, we got the right people in place. Let me just cut the checks, let them cook.
Man, I think you can actually make some things happen as soon as this season. Honestly, I mean, if you look at the South, man, if they're going to win the South, now is the year to do it. I mean, you look at, New Orleans is in a bad, they're in a tough spot right now. Atlanta, they're kind of so-so. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they're good, but at the same time, I think they're beatable. I think they're definitely beatable. So there's actually some things that Bryce plays at a good level. If Derek Brown comes back, they're playing at a high level, you have your pieces in place. And if you have a good draft, you have some people that can come in and contribute right away, they could have a good season. They could do something crazy this year. So, I mean, obviously, I think the season after will probably be the most realistic, but I could see them having a breakout year this year right now, especially like you got Bryce, man. If he plays the way that I know that he can play, or I think he can, and everybody else,
Mm,
there's no telling what they could do this year.
right,
I think the South is attainable to
right,
win. I
right,
really do. I think
right.
there's a lot of teams they're rebuilding right now, and that they come in because we lost some close games. We lost a close one to Kansas City. We lost a close one to Philadelphia. So I don't think a lot of people realize, just even Tampa Bay, that was a close one. There was like a 3 game stretch where they were all close games that we lost at the
Mm,
end of the season. And once we kind of got in, you got to think about, we got a depleted defense, but the offense was carrying us.
right.
So, and if you start, winning a few of those games, just imagine if we won those 3 games. That's an 8-win team right there. It's an
Yeah,
8-win team.
yeah. Like you said,
During a depleted season.
some of those games, if we would have able to win those, that would have been maybe plus 3, 4 in the win column. I think X is going to break out this year because we kind of found out after the fact last season that he was dealing with some injury stuff that was lingering since South Carolina, and he was just playing on through the season with. But I think with a full off season of getting that right and working with the jugs and everything, that he gonna get right, because we've been seeing videos of him out on that trail ride, riding horses, down in Mullins. Shout out to everybody in Mullins, South Carolina. And I think with him, he's definitely a talent, big body wide receiver, can use his physical strength with the body to be able to box out and go at high point. We kind of know that the whole backstory, the accent, and everything was sweet rookie year. You got to put out and show up this year, because I'm thinking
Absolutely.
fans are looking for that for XL. Whereas, like, we see you riding horses, we hear you, doing everything, but we need your boots on the ground at Bank of America Stadium. See what I did there? Minus the fans. Where them fans at?
Oh, where the fans at, man? I know that's right, man. But as a South Carolina native, as a Gamecocks fan, I was elated. I did predict that we was going to get a Xavier Legette, so I was very, very happy about that. He had a decent season, what I'm saying, about 400 some, receiving yards or whatnot. Not the greatest in the world, but I definitely think that this could be a breakout year for him. He has everything that you look for as far as his body type, his speed, and no one's harder on himself than himself. He's very, very hard on himself, very tough on himself. Whenever he has a bad game or something like that, he'll be the first to tell you that. Then he'll tell you he has to improve, he has to get better. So I'm definitely looking for him to have a breakout season. Him along with Coker, man, that's just imagine that those two take it to another level right there, and you might add one more person. Then you have Adam Thielen. So man, it's I'm telling you, that's when I say like that the offense can really go to the next level, and there's no
Mm,
telling what the Panthers can do next season. But it's definitely going to take someone like XL really stepping up, which I think he will.
mm.
Not will he have 1,000 yards or something like that? I'm not sure about that, but man, he's definitely a hell of a red zone target, that's for sure. which is
Yeah.
all I really cared about. You get him in the red zone, and he's got to catch. He's got to. There are a few games, man. Obviously he was struggling with some things with his wrist or whatnot, but there's a few catches you got to catch. You can't drop those passes, man, because that's was the difference between a win and a loss. If he had caught a few of those,
Mm.
could have won a few of those games.
Yeah.
So he knows he has to kind of step it up to another notch, and I definitely think he will. But
Yeah.
the guy that everyone needs to watch over is Coker. Even though I'm an XL fan, that's my boy, Gamecock and everything. Coker is that guy, man. That's one right there. You got to give Dan Morgan his props for because he wasn't even drafted. He was an undrafted free agent, UDFA.
Mm.
And for
Yeah.
him to kind of pick up that guy right there, and he came from a smaller school, but for him to kind of just come up and play the way I think he had an 100-yard game at one point,
Mm.
and with Bryce. So man,
Yeah.
I definitely think that's another one right there that's really going to step up to the plate and have a big season. He's going to
Yeah.
have a big season. Yeah, watch what I tell you right now.
Yeah.
That's what I'm watching out for right there too.
Yeah, Coker was very sneaky because I know Smitty was very high on him when he came out last year out of Holy Cross, saying he was like the best route runner out of all the wideouts that was coming out last year. And we kind of saw that last year, but like you said, he's probably going to be due for a breakout year this year. And Panthers offensive line, here's a good marketing strategy for you all. Look, get you all some black tees, have BPA on it, kind of like what APA used to do, Acolytes Protection Agency. If you know, you know. BPA, Bryce Protection Agency.
Mhm. Yeah, I can see that right there. Like I said, we talked about defense. Obviously, defense is a big need, but and I know even Joe Person, he said that they're talking, defense is going to be first, but do not
Mm,
be shocked if they go wide receiver for their first pick, or they go with a tight end like a Tyler Warren or someone like that. Don't be shocked because they know that they got to get him some more weapons for Bryce.
right,
He's an amazing player. He's very man has a high IQ and all of those things, but every quarterback needs weapons, even some of the greatest in the league. Aaron Rodgers needed them over the years, and
right,
everyone else. Man, Patrick Mahomes needed it. Um, Joe Burrow, all of them. But
right,
definitely need more weapons here in Carolina, man. If we're going to take things to the next level, if we're going to win the South, sneak into the playoffs, whatever it is we're going to do, we
right.
definitely need more.
Yeah, because I saw the highlights for Tyler Warren out of Penn State. If we were to draft that man, we would not have a tight end like that since Cam had Greg Olsen. Thank you, Chicago Bears, for that. And that would give Bryce a security blanket to go along with the receiving core they already have. But then if you also go tech at 8, then you pair him with Coker, X, Thielen, and I think David Moore's coming back too. That'll be a nice little get up too. So Dan, Dave, and Brent, they got some various moves that they want to do. I like the additions that they made in free agency with Pat Jones, Turk, Roseboom from the Rams, got Bobby Brown from the Rams. I want them to play my prerogative or something. Every time he gets a sack, he pelvic thrusts after every sack, or at least do his team intro like when Bobby Brown hopped out the helicopter in the Thug 11 video. I gotta have that at least one time. So I really think, they are kind of turning the corner saying, okay, we kind of sort of know who we are, know where we want to go. Let's continue to give Bryce help. And I think with Canales saying Bryce is the starter going into the season, that put a lot of weight off of Bryce's shoulders. But I still feel the jury is out on Bryce, where if he continues to play like back half of the second half of the season, like he did this season, then okay, Bryce is the guy. But he can't regress in any way. He cannot have a game where it's a dud. He gets yanked. Andy comes in, release. Bryce gets put back in. Bryce got to show up. Bryce got to show out. Bryce went to Matter Day. Bryce went to Alabama. He ain't no Heisman Trophy winner for nothing. They don't give it to everybody. So Bryce got the tools, and I think that Bryce will step up to the plate. That he will put the league on notice. And to quote the great Kendrick Lamar, sometimes you got to pop out and show you know who's. And I think Bryce is gonna pop out and show you know who's. He's gonna let all the naysayers know. Shout out to Jalen Milrow that that he's gonna be that dude in the league.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I definitely think this is his year. I don't see him regressing. You know what I'm saying? He might have a bad game every once in a while. Everybody has a bad game, but You got to give a lot of credit to Andy Dalton as well because he came in, he took that starting position after a few games, and he could have just been selfish. Hey, I'm just going to focus on keeping his starting position. But from what I hear, he actually took Bryce under his wing. And for a lot of people, what I'm saying, they say behind the scenes, man, that's the reason why he was more comfortable stepping into the role and improving. So a lot of people don't talk about it, but Andy Dalton, and if you actually look on the sideline, man, he actually spends more time with Andy Dalton than he does the quarterback coach. So that says a lot about what he thinks of Andy Dalton right there and what he's done for him. And there's a reason why they re-signed him. They could have just let him go. But I was told it was a priority to bring him back for that reason, for
Mm,
Bryce.
yeah.
That's why he was brought back.
Yeah, so it almost kind of sound like with Andy being gracious enough to say, "Look, I know where I'm at in my career. I'd have been the starter in Cincinnati and Dallas and New Orleans. I'm on the back nine of my career. I know why I was brought here. They got a young guy that they want to bring in, develop, and I'm here to mentor him, which is opposite of what we kind of sort of see on some other teams where the vet feels threatened when a team draft a young QB because they know, hey, my time is up. Because we kind of heard stories when Brett Favre was still starting in Green Bay when they drafted Aaron Rodgers when he fell to him, that it obviously wasn't, you know, big brother boys and girls club kind of thing. It was more of like, I'm coming for everything and
Mhm,
you either move out the way or get ran over. But for Andy to
mhm.
be that humble, it's a great thing to see because you don't really see that a lot with, star athletes who are on the backside of their career knowing that, okay, young boy coming. What do I got to do to keep my job? I'm not going to show you the playbook. I'm not going to teach you what I know because you gunning for me. It's a not for long lead for a reason. It's a what have you done for me lately business. And for him to kind of know to put that ego aside kind of says what kind of a guy, what kind of a teammate Andy Dalton is.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So it's really a match made in heaven right there with those two, man. You got the number two. He knows his position. He knows his role at this point in his career. He's in the back end of his career. So just like you said, so he did a lot of great things in Cincinnati and Dallas and a few other places. But now this is the time. Hey, let me take this kid under my wing. Let me mold him. Let me show him the right way. And just have him. Hey, I'm there if you need me. If you need me
Mhm.
to come in, he gets injured or something like that. But I think he knows at this point that hey, Bryce could have a 10, 15-year career. He's that young. So, he is the guy. I think they're ready to say that he's the franchise. I think he's going to show that this year that he is the franchise guy. I'm going to go on and, put my reputation on the line with that right there and say, hey, this is our guy. But a lot of people, they still have questions.
Mhm.
The sample size just wasn't enough for them. And now I can respect that. That's rightfully so. But I think after next season, for sure, he's going to prove he's the guy moving forward.
Yeah, so Bryce is going to upgrade from the learner's permit to get the full drivers where he can finally drive the car on his own and not have that chaperone alongside him in the car. He can drive on his own now. He's not restricted driving from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. with a licensed driver in the car. Panthers going to give him the full keys to the car.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely going to get the keys this year for sure. I can see that already, man. So, man, buckle up your seatbelts, man. I think the team is going to shock a lot of people this year, man. They're depending on that draft right there. They get that draft just right. They bring in a few more pieces, and a few other people elevate their game. There's no telling that this team could shock some people next season.
Mhm.
I really think it could be that kind of season
Yeah,
for sure.
I think so too. I predict Carolina will probably get 8 to 9, could possibly win the division, maybe backdoor into the playoffs, depending on how things shake. But they'll definitely will make some noise and let everybody know that they coming. So two more things, and I'm gonna get you out of here. Where do you think Eamon from South Carolina will land? And do you think that the Eagles will run it back, get another Lombardi, or do you think it's going to be a Kansas City revenge tour this upcoming season?
Man, Eamon Warren, man, I'm being biased. I wouldn't mind seeing him in Carolina, man, honestly. But I don't think that we'll move. If we move back, there's a possibility we could probably get him because that is a need as well. I know we drafted, another one, from I forget his name right now, but we drafted him. We got him in free agency, but there's still a need for a safety as well. So
Mo Red.
there's a possibility. Yeah, yeah. If we get him, man, I think it's definitely a possibility. But I guess we'll see what happens, man. As far as Philadelphia and Kansas City. I'm going to say Kansas City. I think that Patrick Mahomes, man, you can see it on him right now. He's still trim. He didn't let himself go this offseason. He's been working out. He's nice and trim. He cut that hair up, man. He's focused. He has that look in his eyes right now. They got embarrassed in that Super Bowl, man. So I definitely think that I don't want people to be swayed by that Super Bowl performance because they're still one of the top tier teams to the league. You can't count them out just yet, just because they had one bad showing in the Super Bowl. They made it to the Super Bowl, and they probably shouldn't have. There were some close games. There was a lot of close games. We could have beat them, but it says a lot about the organization for them to be as resilient as they are to continue to win. And I do think they're going to come back and they're going to get their get back. They're going to get their get back for real, man. So, Patrick, man, he's still young. He still has an opportunity to do some great things in his career. I don't think he's won his last Super Bowl yet. Nope. He has some more rings to win, and I think he's going to do that starting next season. So the front office is going to do whatever they can to bring the pieces in, for him to be able to compete at a high level. That offensive line is definitely needing some work. He was running for his life in that Super Bowl, man. We all saw that. So they definitely need some work. He needs a few more weapons for a wide receiver. They just don't have enough right now, and they haven't had enough for a while. And I know that Patrick Mahomes is so great that some people might think, oh, he doesn't need all of that. It goes back to me saying every quarterback needs some weapons, whether it's a wide receiver, tight end, or whatnot. And he just didn't have enough, man. So they have a good draft that they bring some people in, some more people. They can find themselves right back in that Super Bowl and possibly win again for sure.
Yeah.
That's who I got one.
Yeah, I think Football Curry is definitely going to give him another one. And two bonus. Um, who's the team NFL wise that can probably pull this upcoming season what Washington did, where they came out of nowhere, was one game away from the Super Bowl? And do you think Cincinnati will finally break through now that Burrow, T, and Chase all got the bag?
The first question is tricky because every season there's a team that just comes out of nowhere. You don't know who that team is going to be, man. It's just like you might think you have an idea who it is, and this like I said, no one saw Washington doing what they did with Jaden Daniels. Obviously, Jaden Daniels, he came out on fire, but to be one game away from the Super Bowl, I don't think anybody really saw that happening. So I'm not sure about who that may be. It's going to come out of somewhere. There's no telling. But and what was your other question? You said as far as Cincinnati.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Burrow, man, he's just a magnificent quarterback, man. They got a solid young team, and there's no telling, man. Just if you have that elite quarterback, you can go anywhere. You can go as far as you want to go. So I think he's that great that he can pull them up by the bootstrings, man. And they started off pretty rough, man, but they had a pretty solid inning. It was a decent inning that they had. So
Yeah.
I think they could, if they start off on fire this year, there's no telling where they could go, man. It could
Yeah.
be a surprise.
Yeah, they started out slow last season, finished that back half strong, and it was allegedly said that Kansas City pulled their starters last game of the season against Denver because had they would have beaten Denver, then Cincinnati would have backdoored into the playoffs, and it was apparently that they were ducking the smoke.
I mean, there's some legitimacy to that. I mean, I'm just saying, I'm not saying that I believe in conspiracies or anything like that, but just imagine if Cincinnati would have got in, and that's not one team that you want to play. If you have an elite quarterback, that's the level of Joe Burrow, man. That's not somebody you want to see in the playoffs, man, at all. So
Mhm.
there might be some truth to that, I would say, for sure.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not trying to say that anybody's scared of anybody, man, but yeah, that's a possibility there.
because I guess word got back to Kelsey about that, and Kelsey was kind of went on his John Morant rant where he was like, shout out to Sumter, where he was like, we want all the smoke, climb the chimney and everything. And I think that with the AFC, that's a death march because you got Cincy, Kansas City, you have Baltimore, you got Buffalo. So the AFC is a little bit more black and blue, while the NFC is definitely more wide open because outside of Philly, it's pretty much a crapshoot.
Yeah, it really is, man. So there's a lot of different ways. I'm just not sure right now. Like you were talking about Detroit earlier. There's no telling how that's going to go. They could come back strong, but they're missing some pieces. Pittsburgh, we're still waiting to see about their situation. With the quarterback. You can't count Mike Tomlin out, man. He's been an amazing coach over the year. That's one guy that I personally look up to personally. So there's no telling what they could do. They could do some things. It's just all going to depend on next week with that draft. I got to see how the draft is going to shake out, what some of these people are going to do in the draft, and that's going to tell me more of a story. It's like, okay, I can see them sneaking up. That was a good draft pick right there. I can see that panning out. I can see them doing some things next year. So next year is going to tell us a lot. I mean, next week is definitely going to tell us a lot.
Yeah, you can definitely tune in for that on ESPN ABC live from Green Bay, Wisconsin. Your season starts now with the draft and the who has the number one pick this year? Oh, Titans. They're on the clock, and we all know probably Cam Ward is from Miami. The U is going to go number one. Travis Hunter probably going to go to Cleveland. Now, if for some reason that boy falls to us. Ooh, this won't happen. It ain't gonna happen. We ain't gonna move
Yeah.
up to go get him, to go get Abdul Carter. I think ultimately we're gonna stay put at 8. We're gonna draft either Jalen Walker, Tet, or Warren. The only way I see us moving back, like I said earlier, is if somebody who's QB needy, really desperate, wants to play, let's make a deal, give us a strong offer, and then we move back, pick up the guy who we want later, because when you pick up a guy later, you ain't gotta pay him that much because of where you are drafted. Kind of like what they did last year with them moving up from the second to the first to get X. Because with them getting X in the first round instead of the second, that fifth year option. Because if he pans out and you like, okay, we want to keep him, we're gonna lock him up, get the fifth year option in, so that way we don't have to let the market set what we gotta pay him. Kind of like it was smart looking in hindsight with what Dan did by locking JC up before old boy down in I think Houston, I want to say, got his deal. So he was able to set the market, get JC locked in, let somebody else get their big bag, and JC's deal is probably going to look like a penance compared to when everybody else is going to be up for their money. So I really think Carolina's making the right moves. And like you said, we're going to make some noise. 2025, 2026 is definitely going to be the breakout. But like you said, that our division is pretty much wide open to where if everything breaks our way, if the defense can be respectable, can keep us in games, and the offense continues to build, like you said, I really think that the Panthers are really gonna put the NFC and the rest of the league on notice. So before we conclude this interview, bro, any shout outs you want to give and plug your socials, man?
Definitely, man. The 4-man rush, man. Definitely, man. Check us out, man. Check us out on social media, on Instagram, Facebook, man. Just check us out, man. You can definitely follow me on Facebook, Canardo Greg James. I go by Greg, but you can call me Canardo too. That's fine. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Yeah, man. Just definitely had a good time with you, man, and I look forward to seeing what the Panthers are going to do. And musically, man, the different changes in music. Look forward to all of those things.
Yeah, man. And you can catch this interview wherever you stream podcasts and on the official YouTube channel at youtube.com/beyond the album cover. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a big thank you, round of applause to my bro, Greg James, a part of the 4-man rush. They got all your needs for all your Carolina Panthers content. Greg, thank you for coming on, bro. You're welcome back to the podcast anytime. And as always, ending it with the motto of our beloved Carolina Panthers: keep pounding.
Keep pounding, man. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much for having me, man.
I bet.